Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is in it, but not of it. So what we're addressing here is what it is to be living life engaged and also as observer. So to give us ourselves a little bit of remove to have a broader perspective, perhaps, on our experience of life. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine brilliant, bright light. Well, let's do the light thing. Let's imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating and electrifying, energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs and your organs and your cells and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling and the tingling. And allow that sensation to bring you present right here, right now, into this physical form, this marvelous, amazing, miraculous body that allows you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. So great to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Today, we're talking about being in the world, but not of it. Good morning, Lisa. Great to have you here with us. Hope you're doing well today, thinking about your move. I'm thinking about your move and wishing you ease and joy in the process. Okay, so in it, but not of it. What does that look like? So we can easily get immersed in emotion and reactivity and victimhood, or just we can get so completely immersed in our mindset that we lose perspective. And I think that if we're able to cultivate this element of ourselves that has perspective, that is the observer self, not to always live there, because we don't want to miss out on the experience of life itself and the ups and downs and joys and sorrows and all of that. Good morning, Bernadette. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about being in it, but not of it. So what I'm really looking to discuss here is not being defined by our experience. So an example of this is when we feel sad, we say, I'm sad. That's the language that we use. And there's an identification there with the emotion, right? Like who I am is I am sad versus I feel sadness. So being in it, but not of it means feeling the feelings, experiencing the feelings, and not identifying with those feelings, not becoming the feelings themselves. So Lisa says, thank you, I'm almost done. Today should be it. Tomorrow head to Delaware for inspection, then Thursday close and move in. Wow, Lisa, how exciting. Good for you. Good for you. And hopefully you are managing to be in it, but not of it. That where you are taking care of what needs to be taken care of and moving through it. I think the in it, but not of it thing, I just see where we make meaning, and then we use that meaning to oppress ourselves in so many ways, right? And I keep going back to this equation that that I've been working with and a client on. And wow, Bernadette, I'm sorry. So I got derailed because I just noticed Bernadette's topic, like Will Smith not being defined as a bully, LOL. Yeah, that's a whole interesting thing, isn't it? I don't feel equipped to make any kind of judgment or evaluation on this. It's really interesting. There's so many different ways that this could be, the event could be seen. I don't know if you guys are aware that during, was it the Oscars, Academy Awards? I don't even know which event it was, but I don't really want to go into into this. It's interesting though, because a joke was made about Jada Pinkett Smith because of her bald head, and it turns out that she has alopecia, which is what I have. That is why I have a bald head, and Will Smith. Thank you, Bernadette. The Oscars. Okay, so. Now I've forgotten the name of the comedian who was hosting the Oscars. Maybe you can tell me, Bernadette. So anyway, the host made a joke, and Will Smith went and smacked it, got up out of the audience, walked onto the stage and smacked him, and then said, "Keep my wife's expletives name out of your mouth," as he went back to his seat. And so it was shocking to anybody, and not acceptable in so many ways, right? Not acceptable behavior to go and physically attack another person. And you know, it's created so much buzz on the internet, and you know, I can see on one level that it was Will Smith defending his wife's honor. I imagine there's quite a lot of pain around that in their family. It was just a cluster of errors, you know, and it'll be really interesting to see what kind of ramifications there are from the Academy or the Oscar body, because that kind of behavior is not acceptable, really, right? It's just not acceptable. And yeah, it leaves me kind of in a quandary. I'd just be curious to hear what you guys think. I don't know what other action he might have better taken to express his sentiments. Anyway, I didn't mean to get locked into this. You know, it's such a bizarro occurrence, and yeah, wild. Anyway, back to being in it but not of it. So that's where we get hooked. Okay, we'll use that as an example of really getting hooked, where we become so reactive to other people's actions or comments or perspectives that we go to battle. And where we live in reaction rather than in in presence, in being able to have perspective and make choices rather than reactions. So being in it but not of it is allowing ourselves to respond to life rather than react. There are egregious things that happen in life, or things that we interpret as egregious. We can say that, right? And as a result of our interpretation, then we react or we act accordingly. And there are consequences to that. So in the Oscar example, certainly there are going to be consequences for Will Smith for having reacted in the way that he did. I think when we get caught up in things, and we identify with the happenings around us, we lose our sense of presence. We lose our ability to respond rather than react. So Lisa says, I cannot hit someone. I've been assaulted and I took it. I physically could not hit her. I never even tried. Wow, Lisa, that's pretty amazing. And I'm wondering if she stopped as a result of you not fighting back, or if she just continued the assault. It sounds like you had presence rather than reaction. I don't know. I don't know what it would be for me in that kind of situation. I don't know how I would respond. I think, depending upon what the circumstances are. Wow, Lisa, I'm so sorry. So she continued, and you did not even try to hit her back. So that's pretty wild, Lisa. I hope that you didn't suffer terrible injuries. It sounds like a horrible experience. So being in it but not of it. I mean, to allow life to unfold and maintain presence. I'm wondering if during that assault you remained present, Lisa, like if you were at choice. It's such an interesting thing to be looking at our humanness, isn't it? To be looking at the crazy things that we do in so many ways. Good morning, Robin. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us. Bernadette says, sometimes things hurt and build up, and all it takes is a flipped comment to break the seal of vulnerability. It may not be specific to any situation. It's just letting it go. I agree. I think that so much of our reactivity is something that it is like an inner fuse that's been lit, and finally it gets to the crossing point, or there's a switch that flips and it's just too much, and whoever's there on the receiving end just has the misfortune of being there in that moment, where we've just become overwrought. And I guess that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about being in it but not of it. It's being in it and of it and identifying with it and making it so real and important that allows us to become overwrought in the first place. And when we're in a flow, when we're allowing ourselves to move with what life creates for us or what life presents to us, then we are able to have a perspective. We're able to not identify with that experience, to not become swept up into it. So Rosalind says the brain will have a thought and make it reality. Being an observer sounds like seeing the thought but not taking action. Yes, the being an observer allows you to see the thought and choose about what action to take. And I think that that's the foundation, is to be able to be at choice. When we're in it but not of it, we have the freedom of choice, I think. Sometimes we can see things unfolding, and if we're not attached to it, then we can often make different choices. We can certainly have a different experience of whatever it is that's unfolding, right? That rather than react from a patterned, conditioned response, when we're in more of an observer mode, the idea is that we would have more choice, that we would be able to respond in a way that was a chosen response. Now, I think there are times when we actually observe ourselves being in a reactive mode. Like we can just, so being the observer doesn't necessarily mean having the objective option to make a different choice of action. Where you see, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to remember if there's a specific experience that I can recount, but I can't, I'm not able to place my hand on it, but it's almost like seeing things unfolding and watching it and not having any ability to shift it. But I do think that when we are engaged in life, there is access to a part of ourselves that can sort of see it from a greater distance, to see it from maybe in the context of a greater whole, and to maybe not be taking it so seriously, to not be creating the resistance, to not be making all kinds of devastating meaning from things. You know, like if somebody says something nasty to me, I don't have to take it to heart. I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to make any particular response to that, do I? When I'm in it and I'm identified with that kind of attack, then maybe I feel the need to answer it. And that's a reactive answering. If I'm observing, if I'm not identified with it, then maybe I can have a different reaction. Maybe I can have a reaction that's more like, wow, you know, maybe no reaction at all, or I'm sorry you're having such a rough day, or even apologize if there was something that was, you know, that was done by lack of awareness, or, you know, rather than defending. So it's interesting to me when we look at the levels of consciousness that humans have, that we all have the capacity for. that we can be immersed in an experience where we're oblivious of the greater surroundings. You know, we're not present to the big picture. And then there are other places where, or another level of consciousness where we are just seeing this big picture, and we're just sort of an actor in the context of life itself. And there are many vantage points in between where we can be standing on this side of a problem or that side of a problem, see things from very different vantage points. And I think what this goes back to foundationally is being identified or not really being identified with our physical experience. So people do have the ability to disengage. And this is a blessing and a curse, I would say, because some people are able or just automatically dissociate. And when we're dissociated, you know, what does that mean? We're not connected. So, you know, on one level, that dissociation can be a survival mechanism, or that dissociation can be something that allows us greater perspective. On another level, dissociation can mean that we're just completely disconnected and not being responsible, not being accountable, not being at choice, not taking action from a place of higher awareness. So I'm not really talking about dissociation to that degree. I guess what we're looking at is some weird combination of dissociation and compassion, where we can allow ourselves not to be so identified with all the mundane manifestations of things, that we don't use that to make our deepest meaning. So for instance, let's say I'm not even coming up with a really good example at the moment, but when people suffer due to things like being stuck in traffic, here's a good example: being in it but not of it. It's like you can be stuck in traffic, and you can be feeling stuck in traffic and resistant and angry and frustrated, and that is how that becomes a beingness. And maybe you get angry and frustrated with other drivers, and they're getting angry and frustrated with you, and you're reacting to their anger and frustration. And that's being like totally immersed in the situation, versus noticing, oh, okay, I'm feeling a little aggravated, right? I'm stuck in traffic, and oh, you know, the traffic is what the traffic is. My being aggravated is not going to change it. What choice do I have here? How else might I be? That's like being the observer. That's having an awareness. I guess what we're talking about is levels of awareness. It's not disconnected. It's just not identified with the tide of an emotional moment. To be able to step back and maybe assess something more broadly. And in the heat of the moment, we often can get carried away. I think that the observer is something that we cultivate, you know, to be able to cultivate the ability to gain a little bit of distance, to, in the midst of all kinds of intense emotion, if we can find a way to step back and say, wait, there's like this tidal wave that's occurring. Let's staunch the tidal wave. Let's hold that back. So Bernadette says it's kind of like putting yourself in another's shoes. I think that that's probably really accurate. You know, that's one way that we can gain more of an observer perspective, is to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, to say, okay, so here's the circumstance. I didn't really like it. What was going on for me internally? What might be going on for that other person that would provoke that reaction? You know, standing back and saying, wow, look at this drama that's unfolding. Is there a place from which, a vantage point from which we might be able to see more of the dynamics more clearly? And I think that that's where the advantage of being the observer lies. It's sort of detaching oneself from the identification with the emotions. You know, it's like, I'm really angry. I am angry, instead of I'm feeling anger, and stepping back from that and saying, okay, so I get that the response that I'm having is anger. What else is going on here? Like, not making the whole circumstance be that person offended me, that person did such and such to me. That's when we're attached to that identity around that experience. When we can sort of step back and see the bigger whole, we can gain insight, and we may be able to alter our experience of it, our perception of it, to broaden our relationship to it. So let's see. Rosalind says, so learning how to pause in between an emotion and reaction. Yes, yes, yes. Learning how to pause between emotion and reaction. And Lisa says, check yourself before you wreck yourself. That's great. That's exactly what we're talking about, is to be able to have that impulse, to be able to step back, you know, to be in it, but not of it. In other words, we can see ourselves in the situation rather than being in the situation. When we can see ourselves being in it, we can gain enough of a distance to be able to get a perspective, to be able to potentially make a different choice. And I love that. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? Is like, check in, step back, look at the whole thing, and come to something from a place of choice. And the thing is that even when we're in the throes of something intense and reactive, there's a moment when we do have the ability to step back, and we can choose even then to exit. And how we can exit might be by saying, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, let's just recalibrate this, or something in that vein. Anyway, thank you. It's that time again. I just want to say how much I appreciate you and all your engagement and going through these morning meanderings with me. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here on the Enlightened World Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, Enlightened World Living, EWN, One with the Earth. And again, it is my deepest pleasure and privilege to be with you. So much love.